Don Quixote do Flamingo feared human malevolence, which is why he kept his reins on the beasts of the world so tight. If humans are fundamentally evil, drifting towards senseless violence if left to their own devices, then as long as he controlled a system that kept them in check, he had nothing to be afraid of. He could stand above it all and play make-believe God. Yet this control was not fortified by oppressive might, but instead cunning deviance, and an insatiable thirst to reclaim an impervious status. However, Doflamingo could never manipulate everything starting out as a man. The only reason the gods have that privilege is because many monsters of the world defend their status. Doflamingo had to concoct that backing himself, yet this could only ever be in the form of a deal. He tried to appease the beasts who rebelled against the system because that's as far as he could go without sheer might. Even the world government, the very organization that used to be under his bubble as a child, cannot halt the raging current that is the Great Pirate Era. And so, when one of these pirates comes sailing in the Heavenly Demon's domain with a stupendous gale at his back, everything falls apart. Law hinted at the cohesive gear called Joker breaking down, and he also knew that he himself would play a role in its desecration. What Law didn't know, though, is this resolution would segue him right into the heart of a changing tide, one that Luffy's ship rides ahead of all others. Law would be there to witness the first rays of a new dawn, and he would also be one of the ones to make way for some of that light to be exposed to the world. Big Mom's defeat, Kaido's defeat. It all started with that declaration in Punk Hazard, a promise that the new era would cut through the mountain hosting complacent emperors unable to reach its true summit. Law helped the pirate who will reach that peak expose the fragility of a system trying to keep progress halted. This reality showcased by how quickly it all fell apart when one man's strings fell to the earth. And Doflamingo's absence from the world's underbelly was a signal to the globe. Now, it's time to unleash what's been festering underneath the current ruler. Now, it is time for someone to run amok and challenge the current regime. Doflamingo played in the confines of the system. He was afraid of what might happen if he stepped out of its boundaries and lost full control. But there are far more dangerous entities who are not afraid. As a matter of fact, one of these beasts would love nothing more than to be crushed by the weight of his own widespread conflict. Roger, Whitebeard, and Odin. All of them yearned to live on. In death, their final declaration unanimously planted seeds that others would inherit for them. They may never witness what they fostered bloom, but their final actions cemented their lingering presence in the future. And it was not to be remembered, no. Odin explicitly states as much for all the ones who died in that same fashion. It was all for the future they saw but couldn't reach. And it didn't matter to them whether they could lay eyes upon that great change or not. All that mattered is that it would come, and that they did everything possible in life to aid that gathering storm. Kaido, from as early as his introduction, makes his dichotomy known. He yearns to die. And not just that, he wants a death worth remembering, a bombastic plummet from 10,000 feet above, landing before the new era. Kaido did not expect to die, just like he doesn't expect to lose in combat. However, if even the slightest chance of his demise, he will make sure it's in an environment where he can go out being seen. That is all that matters to him. The future is irrelevant. He won't be there to witness change, because change is impossible. This is something he learned as a youth. Kaido was used by the system, and when he became too much for the system to bind, his homeland passed him along to a bigger cage. But Kaido always destroyed the bars. No matter the length of those chains, they were never strong enough to eclipse the freedom he yearned for himself. All people, fundamentally, want to be free. Kaido bolstered his mind, body, and spirit to claim his own, no matter the foes who stood against him. But, in the process, he learned a grim truth. He can maintain his liberty because he was strong enough to do so. Most, however, are not so lucky. Strength to stand against the great subjugator from above is few and far between. Society is bound to the kingdoms affiliated with the all-powerful, and they must pay the price, literally. For if they cannot, no one will come to save them from the Great Pirate Era. Kaido saw this as he traveled the world, and one scallywag who yearned to abolish this system was a man Kaido shared many sights with. Rocks amassed a great force, but the people under him weren't content with being represented by someone else's flag. Their spirits yearned for a dream only they could fulfill. So, understandably, when met with a contesting force, their unit collapsed. Kaido watched an era change, and learned why his former captain could not lead it. When sought out by the woman who wanted nothing more than for him to stand beside her, he left without a trace. Kaido knew Linlin would never accept being led by the storm cloud he would manifest over the globe. And he was right. Big Mom would later sit on a throne of her own, ruling a land in a similar fashion to the world government. They pay in coin, she makes her citizens pay with life. The only difference is currency. But Kaido goes a step beyond this exploitation. If the world has been this way as far back as history goes, then why assume the future could be any different? The weak are used to fuel the strong. People may make excuses for this hierarchy, or even claim it to be necessary for an orderly world. But this beast cares not for stability, only to be the pinnacle of strength. And that means amassing an army that tests each other's strength, but never dare check his own. And he uses that powerful force to make the weak do his bidding. They do not get assurances or security in exchange for being loyal to his reign. No. Why should they? What leverage do they have to ask for anything? They are weak, and the weak get no say even in how they die. Kaido would enslave them, turning their lives into fuel for his future that leads nowhere. A great war that engulfs the world. Not to shape a new age that he leads, but to end it all, including his own life. Kaido gave up long ago, depicted especially in his habitual drinking. Unlike his emperor peer who shares alcohol with his comrades in order to bolster a joyous occasion, Kaido is typically seen gorging on liquor in the solitude of Onigashima. He doesn't drink to enhance his fun, but to drown his sorrow. And it's no wonder, for his view of civilization leaves no room for change. The stories of Joy Boy he'd hear in passing sound like nothing more than myths. When looking at the world in a macro sense, there is no joy to be found. Only victors and losers. The victors only experiencing relief so long as they remain victorious. So, Kaido would lay claim to a perpetual victory, one that ends with the ultimate win. Death. He would be seen by all, heard by all, and be remembered by all. Kaido was the beast who stirred the world. He was the terrible pirate whose death song rang across the globe. The King of Beasts yearns not to take the world's mantle to reshape it, but to challenge it to a losing fight. He wants to stare down the ruler of the world as he takes his final breath. Kaido doesn't want to defeat this great oppressor, because he gave up on seeing a new world beyond the current regime long ago. The citizens are starving and can't muster the energy to work. Let them croak and gather more. My son wants to break free from my grasp. Imprison him until he bows to my plan. The new age thinks they can challenge me. I'll give them an arena that siphons all hope. His fights didn't used to be this way, though. He once pondered if he truly had what it took to be at the summit. But this answer was robbed from him with Odin, and that crime left a permanent scar. Odin lost, but he had his bombastic death, and saw a future, the likes of which Kaido could never see. It's the same future Whitebeard and Roger saw. It's what makes their deaths truly significant. They saw joyous laughs beyond the present, which is why they could all smile when death approached. And Kaido mocks even that sentiment with the Smile Devil fruits, a food that compels people to laugh, not from happiness bubbling inside, but a forceful pull that erases all other emotions. Kaido robs citizens of not only their liberty, but how they react to this subjugation as well. A world truly without joy. But at his core, Kaido never changed. He's ultimately done everything to maintain his long-lived freedom. It's only he cares not that it's at the expense of so many chained bodies. If there is a possibility that you can have freedom without subjugation, only Joy Boy can paint such a canvas. But Kaido disregarded that work of art before he even tried to hold the brush. Yet, despite this reality, he still makes room for the faintest possibility. As someone who refused to sit on the painter's stool, he may never become Joy Boy. However, there may be someone who can. If he is indeed the strongest, only the one who can defeat him has the potential to usurp the world's current ruler. And, after 20 long years of uncontested suffering, that man announces himself with a familiar conviction. Luffy arrives to challenge the Storm Cloud for the same reasons as Odin. And just like that samurai of the past, even when defeated, his will could not be crushed. This happens again not long later, Even when Kaido uses this loss as a sign Joy Boy's song would forever be stifled, Luffy comes bouncing back with a stronger beat. And after Kaido is robbed once again from seeing beyond the storm clouds he forms, Luffy returns with the first light of hope Kaido has ever seen, a form encapsulating a potential future, one of absolute freedom. And when these two plans for the world collide, their death songs echo under a full moon. It's okay if you fall now, Straw Hat. You will surely be remembered. I don't care about that. Once you're dead, all that's left are bones. Death is not what completes a person, but what they leave behind does. Kaido's vision of a worldwide battle sunk Wano into an inescapable pit. His idea for the future buried everyone else with him, including the one who thought himself to be beyond the quicksand's reach. And that man who is scorched by the same flame he ignited once dealt a final blow to a warrior who looked up at the sky instead of the sinking ground below. What Luffy fights for, what Yasuo's death truly represents, it is something that transcends the misery of the present, an inheritance passed down despite an 800-year-old blockade. No matter how much the current world tries to stifle the cries of the past, the future will slowly but surely rise up to collect their anguish and transform those sorrowful melodies into a beat of hope, drums that can resound across the world, the tempo that can break the subjugating chains from heaven. Oden knew his country held the first step toward rekindling that timeless song, and Yasui inherited this message to entrust it to the future, just as Oden did 20 years ago. Their deaths meant far more than the surface-level bombastic aesthetic that Kaido yearns for. The demise of these two, and many other great figures in One Piece, are great because their final moments all aided in keeping Joy Boy's beat alive. True freedom, true liberation, is being able to smile in the face of the oppressor, even at death's door. Kaido could not imagine a world beyond the current canvas, which is why he cannot smile after the current Joy Boy deals his final blow. There is salvation in knowing that fable-like figure truly exists. But since Kaido couldn't allow himself to hope for a new world, his death only means he won't ever get to see it, because he never tried to imagine the sights that a new dawn could illuminate. He couldn't see it in life, and his death only cements his eternal blindness. Even his one wish to perish like those he praised is not answered. No one in the Flower Capital witnesses his final moments, and his body is submerged by the quicksand he tried to bury everyone else in. Kaido isn't seen, he isn't heard. No one to recount his final words. His death song, unlike the ones he idolized, is melted away by the scorched earth that he tried to spew over the entire world. Kaido could not become a timeless figure because he couldn't see the future, one that Luffy always sails ahead toward. No matter how dense the present's clouds impede his course, Luffy can and will dispel them with a form of white light reminiscent of the moon, a representation of the long fight at night before a peaceful dawn. Like the guidance of a full moon in the darkness, Luffy wears an unwavering smile when faced with his toughest obstacle yet. Even after death, the beat of his laughter revived his eternal soul, a spirit he inherited from those who inherited Joy Boy's will, a power only made possible because of the collective wish to be free. It was passed on through death, and now this final death actualizes the fate of the world. Luffy's true dream, the sight beyond the King of the Pirates, it's surely something the previous Joy Boy could laugh with alongside the rest of the world. A new dawn of freedom, a future of joy. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed what I had to say. Support me on Patreon for exclusive benefits. For the lowest amount, you can be on screen here with these beautiful people. Big shout out to my top supporters: Sensei Grolon, Thomas White, Yo-Yo Man, and Dre. Another 2 big shoutouts to Marimo for editing this video, and Trapham for the epic thumbnail as always. Okie doke, that's all folks. Spice Boy, out.